Go ahead. Try filing a report for being assaulted if you can.
The one smirking with an ugly grin was Keith's mother, Ashley. Keith had warned me about how awful his parents were, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. This woman had tried to punch me, a pregnant woman. Thankfully, I managed to dodge just in time, so her fist hit my right arm instead of my stomach, but the pain in my arm was significant. If she had struck my stomach with that force, it could have seriously harmed the baby. Ashley knew this and still attacked me. Keith's father, Robert, who was also present, watched the whole scene with a look of genuine amusement. He's no different from Ashley. Both are cut from the same cloth. It's remarkable how someone as kind and sensible as Keith came from such people. While it's surprising, I can't just let these unbelievably irresponsible criminals go unpunished. So, I decided to reveal a little surprise I had prepared for them. They would soon regret their actions. My name is Jessica Smith, and I'm a 38-year-old working professional. I had a boyfriend I'd been dating since my 20s, and we had even promised to get married. However, when I was 32, I found out he had cheated on me. He had brought a woman I didn't know into the home we shared. You're the worst. You cheater. We're done today. I was furious, packed my things, and left the place we had been living together. As I was leaving, he desperately tried to plead with me, offering pathetic excuses.
It's not like that. It was just a moment of weakness.
I ignored everything he said and cut ties with him on the spot. Then, I threw the engagement ring he had given me at him and walked out of the home I had lived in for years. Because of what happened, I decided marriage wasn't for me anymore, and I turned 36. Another year alone. I felt a bit lonely, but I was done with being betrayed by men. That said, on my birthday, I ended up feeling a little sentimental and spent the night drinking alone until late. The next day, regretting how much I had drunk, I got on the train. The crowded rush hour made me feel unwell. Oh no. Just as I thought that, my legs started to give out, and I felt like I was going to collapse.
Are you okay?
The person who helped me was Keith. Keith supported me and helped me off the train, taking care of me on a bench at the station.
Are you feeling unwell? Or do you have any medical conditions? Should I call an ambulance?
I'm fine.
But your face looks really pale. You shouldn't push yourself.
Seeing his genuine concern, I swallowed my pride and explained why I wasn't feeling well. I just drank too much last night, so really, I don't need an ambulance. Why did I have to admit my embarrassing state to a stranger? My face felt as hot as if I could boil water. I was sure it must have been red. Keith looked a bit surprised for a moment, then smiled gently.
Then you'll be okay. That's good.
He didn't laugh at me for getting sick from drinking. Instead, he looked relieved. His kind expression made my heart skip a beat. After that, I exchanged contact information with Keith, wanting to thank him for helping me, and that's how we started dating. He was the one who confessed his feelings first, saying he admired my responsible nature. Me, responsible, when I got sick from a hangover. When I brought up how we met, Keith laughed and responded,
It's those little slips of yours that I find so charming.
With that response, I felt I could trust him and agreed to start dating. Keith was the same age as me, 36 at the time we met. Since we were both at an age where it made sense, we began dating with marriage in mind. But then, one day, I found out I was pregnant. The moment I learned about the pregnancy, I felt both joy and anxiety. What will Keith think when he finds out I'm pregnant and we're not even married yet? We were already living together, so I waited for him to come home to share the news.
Really? That's amazing. Thank you, Jessica.
Keith's face turned red, and he seemed teary-eyed as he celebrated with joy. Seeing that, I realized I had no reason to worry, and I smiled too.
It's a bit out of order, but, Jessica, will you marry me?
Of course, let's be happy together as a family. I accepted Keith's proposal. However, when I mentioned the word family, Keith's expression darkened slightly. What's wrong?
Sorry, Jessica. There's something I haven't told you about my parents.
I tilted my head, listening to Keith's story. What he revealed was shocking. He had a sister named Emily, and I knew from our early dates that his father, Robert, was a city council member and his mother, Ashley, was a homemaker. However, he never shared any more details, and he had never spoken about any family memories. I had assumed they were just strict, but the image Keith painted of Robert was far from what you'd expect of a city council member.
Dad was always obsessed with academics and forced Emily and me to study. If we didn't get good grades on tests, he'd often deny us dinner. In worse cases, he'd lock us out of the house in the freezing cold.
And Ashley didn't try to help them. On the contrary, she sided with Robert.
Dad would hit us because he wanted us to attend a school with a strong academic reputation. I can't understand it, but at least there was a reason behind it. But Mom would hit us just because she didn't like something.
Ashley would lash out at Keith and Emily whenever she felt like it. Keith shared that when he was small and Ashley pushed him down, leaving him sitting on the ground, she just laughed at him instead of helping. Hearing this, I was left speechless.
I couldn't stand my mother, so I left home early. Emily also moved out soon after, and now she lives with her kind husband and their 2 kids. Of course, when we get married, I'll make sure my parents don't interfere in our lives. But there's still a chance they might reach out unexpectedly. If that bothers you, it's okay to turn down my proposal.
Keith looked at me with a determined expression. I responded by flicking his forehead.
Ouch.
You're so dumb, Keith. I'm marrying you, not your parents.
Jessica.
When I smiled, Keith looked like he was about to cry. I'm marrying you, no matter what anyone says.
Thank you, Jessica.
Keith hugged me tightly, and I patted his back. To be honest, part of me felt anxious hearing Keith's story. But I knew I didn't want to break up with him because of his parents. The following week, I met Emily for the first time. We chose our favorite coffee shop for the meeting. Emily arrived 10 minutes early.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for supporting Keith.
She greeted me energetically. Unlike Keith, who was more laid back, Emily was lively and full of energy. Nice to meet you, I'm Jessica. I'm happy to meet you, Emily. We're close in age, so feel free to speak casually.
Thank you, Jessica.
Emily and I instantly clicked from the moment we met. There were even times when Keith was left sitting alone, feeling a bit left out.
Hey, I'm glad you two are getting along, but I feel a little left out. Can I join the conversation too?
Keith's comment made Emily and me exchange glances and laugh. However, Emily's expression darkened when we started talking about the wedding.
Well, I'm really happy that you're marrying Keith, but our parents are a bit of a problem. Did Keith tell you about them?
Emily asked hesitantly. I nodded with a reassuring smile. Yes, I've heard, but I still want to marry Keith.
Thank you, Jessica.
Seeing Emily's eyes fill with tears made Keith tear up a bit too. I had thought they were different from each other, but I realized they shared the same sensitivity. After successfully meeting with Emily, the only thing left was to introduce Keith to my parents. Keith suggested that we only inform his parents about the marriage rather than meeting them in person. I didn't mind meeting them directly, but Keith was worried about me being pregnant and proposed this approach. I thought he was being a bit too cautious, but if that's what he wanted, I had no reason to oppose it. Keith, another call? Who is it? However, a week after meeting Emily for the first time, it was a Saturday, so I was relaxing at home with Keith, but his phone kept ringing nonstop. He ignored it, but the calls had been coming in since the morning, and now it was past noon. The abnormal number of calls made me curious, so I finally asked Keith about it.
It's my mom.
Keith answered with a bitter expression. I see. He doesn't want to pick up. I figured as much, but after the phone kept ringing, Keith finally gave in.
Hello.
Keith's voice was tense as he answered. The next moment, I could hear a loud voice from the other end, even from where I was sitting.
So you're getting married without telling us? How could you not inform your parents? What are you thinking? I didn't raise you to be like this. Has she brainwashed you?
Keith's body jerked. His face, which had been normal moments ago, was now pale. His fingers were trembling. Seeing his reaction, I was more shocked by his state than by the loud voice on the phone.
Next week, we're meeting her family. You'll make all the arrangements, and don't you dare choose a cheap restaurant or you'll regret it.
That's...
Are you ignoring your mother?
At his mom shouting, Keith froze, his face still pale. He had been mistreated by Ashley since he was a child. Maybe he was recalling those traumatic memories. Keith, it's okay. Let's meet them.
What? But...
It's fine. I have a plan. I smiled to reassure him and gently held his hand. His hand was cold, drained of color, but as I held it, warmth gradually returned to his fingertips.
Okay.
Though his face remained pale, he nodded, looking into my eyes. And so, I found myself unexpectedly preparing to meet Keith's parents. On the day of the meeting, we chose an upscale restaurant that we had selected. I made a reservation at a place where his parents wouldn't have any reason to complain. However, my parents got stuck in traffic and were going to be a bit late. Let's go ahead and get to the room. If we all arrive late, who knows what they might say. Although I had never met Keith's parents in person from the phone call and his stories, I could easily imagine them making a fuss over any small delay. Keith, looking tense, nodded in agreement.
I'll protect you, Jessica.
Keith said, trying to hide his trembling hands. I smiled back and nodded, but inside, I resolved to be the one to protect him. We then entered the room where Robert and Ashley were waiting. Nice to meet you. My name is Jessica. I apologize for the delay in my greeting. I greeted them politely. Ashley looked me up and down, then sneered.
This is Keith's fiancée. She's way too old. Keith, you should have chosen someone younger. She probably can't even have kids.
The initial attack was so strong that I couldn't help but frown. That's not something you say to someone you're meeting for the first time. I glanced at Robert beside her and saw him grinning unpleasantly. He seemed to be enjoying Ashley's behavior and my reaction.
I'm marrying Jessica, no matter what anyone says.
Keith said, his voice trembling. Robert's grin grew wider.
You're getting bold, Keith. Have you forgotten everything I did to raise you? Seems you need more discipline.
Recalling the past, Keith's face turned pale at Robert's words. Stepping in for Keith, I spoke up against them. You mentioned earlier that I probably can't have children, but I'm actually pregnant. And there's no rule that says we need parental approval to get married. You don't have the right to decide who Keith marries. Their smug smiles vanished at my words.
What did you say? You're pregnant.
Yes, that's right. Ashley's face twisted in anger. She suddenly stood up and rushed toward me.
How dare you get pregnant with Keith's child without my permission? You home wrecker.
Shouting, she aimed her fist at my stomach. I quickly raised my right arm to block her punch. Ouch. Even though it was the fist of an older woman, a dull pain shot through my arm. She had tried to strike my stomach with considerable force.
Hey! Did you just try to hit Jessica's stomach?
Keith's voice rose in anger, surprising even him. Ashley looked at him, grinning maliciously.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It was just such a shock to suddenly hear that she's pregnant. I got a little excited. I didn't mean any harm.
After all the insults she hurled at me, she had the nerve to claim she meant no harm.
It's not something to make such a fuss about, is it? You and that woman aren't even married yet. Whatever happens to the baby has nothing to do with you, Keith.
What did you say?
Actually, it's more convenient if there's no child. That way, you can break up with her easily. After that, we'll find a suitable woman for you ourselves.
The sheer selfishness of their words made me glare at them, clutching my aching right arm. Ashley noticed my glare and smirked as she said,
Go ahead. Try filing a report for being assaulted if you can.
Robert, wearing a grin just like Ashley's, added something unbelievable.
I'm a city council member, and I have connections with the police. Filing a report won't do any good. Without any evidence, it won't even be accepted.
The moment I heard Robert's words, something snapped inside me. These two, while being Keith's parents, were clearly a harmful presence that would only cause trouble for both of us. I couldn't allow such dangerous people to continue unchecked. Above all, these two had hurt my beloved Keith. I also knew from Emily's story that they had caused her pain during her childhood. I can't forgive anyone who brings misery to the people I love. Oh, is that so? Then I'll gladly press charges. As I said this, the door to the room quietly opened.
I've heard enough.
Who are you? This is our private room. You can't just walk in.
Robert shouted at the unexpected person who entered. However, the person calmly replied,
I'm Jessica's father. I apologize for being late. We were stuck in traffic.
My mother followed him into the room. Both of them had calm expressions, but there was unmistakable anger in their eyes.
So, you're her parents, right? Let's get straight to the point. We don't approve of this marriage. Take your daughter and leave.
At Robert's words, Ashley nodded in agreement.
What kind of upbringing do you have? Getting pregnant before marriage. How shameless. It must be tough having such an irresponsible daughter.
My mother responded calmly to Ashley's spiteful words.
To still hold such outdated beliefs in this day and age, it seems your mindset is stuck in the past. Do people around you ever point out how old-fashioned you are? Oh, but maybe you don't have any friends who would tell you that.
What did you say?
And actually, it's you two who are shameless and irresponsible.
As she said this, my mother pulled something out of her bag. My father also took out a small, shiny badge from his bag. They held these out to Robert and Ashley, speaking slowly.
I'm with the police. We're required to carry our police ID even on our days off, but I never expected it would be useful in a situation like this. Just so you know, we won't be intimidated by the power of a mere city council member.
And I'm a lawyer. This is my lawyer's badge. Are you familiar with it? If Jessica wants to press charges against you, I'll gladly represent her.
At first, Robert and Ashley seemed confused by what my parents were saying. Their smug expressions quickly vanished, replaced by dumbfounded looks.
What? Police and a lawyer?
Ashley finally realized the truth before her, and in that instant, both their faces turned pale. Yes, my parents aren't ordinary people. My mother is a police officer, and my father is a lawyer. Even though they had no idea, they had picked a fight with the wrong people. Growing up, my parents were very busy, so I often felt lonely as a child. I spent more time with sitters than with my own parents. But still, they always made time for me and showed me a lot of love whenever they could. Thanks to that, I grew up without resentment and respect them for the pride they have in their work. When I heard about Robert and Ashley's behavior from Keith, I immediately consulted my parents.
That sounds troublesome, but if it comes to it, Mom can use her authority to help.
Hey, that's not what the police are for, but if anything happens, Dad can always use the law to support you.
Jokes aside, we're always on your side, Jessica. If anything happens, don't hesitate to rely on us.
My parents promised that they would step in and help me immediately if anything happened. Remembering that promise, I agreed to the meeting that Ashley had more or less forced, and I prepared thoroughly with my parents before attending.
So, you tried to hit Jessica, didn't you? I heard your nasty insults over the phone too earlier. You seemed curious about Jessica's upbringing, but seeing how easily such foul words come out of your mouth, I wonder what kind of upbringing you had.
I pulled out my phone, which had been connected to a call, and hung up. Before entering the room, I had secretly called my mother to update her on the situation.
When I heard you tried to hit Jessica, I nearly lost control of the car. How dare you lay a hand on our daughter? We won't forgive you.
My father, his face showing an anger I'd never seen before, directed his fury at them. Robert and Ashley, who were initially intimidated by my parents' professions, didn't seem like the type to back down easily.
So what? You were only listening. You didn't witness anything yourself.
Looking for video evidence. Well, it's right there, captured by the camera hidden in that plant. I pointed to the corner of the room where a potted plant stood. Between the leaves, the camera lens peeked out.
When did that happen?
There's a reason I chose this restaurant for the meeting. My sister works here. My sister has been working at this restaurant for years and is well trusted by the owner. When I consulted her about Keith's parents, she suggested using her restaurant as the meeting place. She also proposed secretly setting up a camera just in case. Evidence is crucial if anything happens. Dad said the same thing. This kind of thinking is probably due to having a lawyer as a father. My sister explained the situation to the owner and got permission to set up the camera. We installed the camera as a precaution, but I never expected it would actually come in handy. You really are worse than we imagined, just as Keith described. Have you ever heard of the lower basic decency? Ashley and Robert, who didn't expect there to be a camera, turned red with anger, trembling. Their claim that they hadn't hit me was now invalidated. Any further excuses would be pointless.
You're the one in the wrong. You seduced Keith and even got pregnant. You're the one acting irresponsibly.
Ashley, still unwilling to back down, pointed at me and continued to shout. Robert joined in, his face contorted with anger.
That's right. Ashley is absolutely correct. Your daughter is the one to blame. I'm a city council member, and I have connections with some of the best lawyers. I also have other powerful contacts. I'll use every connection I have to make sure you can't live in this area anymore.
Robert wore a triumphant smile. Meanwhile, my mother listened to his words with a look of disbelief.
You know, that's considered a criminal threat. Are you aware of that?
Shut up. You may say you're a police officer, but you're just a woman. You probably don't even hold a significant position.
Robert assumed my mother wasn't important because she's a woman, but she's just as tough and capable as any man around her, and she holds the rank of lieutenant. And honestly, she's the scariest person in our family when she's angry.
To think you'd have the nerve to challenge a cop like that. Guess I'll have to use my trump card.
Trump card? While I looked puzzled, my father made a call. The person he contacted arrived shortly afterward.
Hey, it's been a while. Jessica.
Henry, what are you doing here? The person who entered the room was my father's older brother, Henry. Henry is a very busy man, and I hadn't seen him in years. I hadn't even told him about my wedding or my pregnancy yet, but it seemed my father had reached out to him. Seeing him, Robert's eyes widened as much as possible.
Why are you here, Henry, the mayor?
Yes, Henry is the mayor. He was elected about 10 years ago and has held the position ever since, gaining the trust of the citizens. He's always working tirelessly for the community, which is why I hadn't seen him in years. When I heard that Robert was a city council member, Henry's face immediately came to mind. I thought that he might be able to help solve the problem. However, I didn't want to trouble him with my issues, knowing how busy he was. That's why I never reached out to him myself.
Oh, come on, Jessica. I told you to rely on me if you ever needed help, didn't I? Well, this is exactly one of those times.
I'm sorry, Henry. I didn't want to be a burden.
This kind of thing isn't a burden at all.
Even though Henry said that, I knew he had taken time out of his busy schedule to come. I couldn't be more grateful. The kind smile he had for me turned serious when he looked at Robert.
I believe your name is Robert. How dare you lay a hand on my dear Jessica? I'll be reporting this incident to the council, and you can expect a strict penalty. Be prepared.
Robert, facing Henry, was at a loss for words, his face turning from pale to ashen. While Robert stood there speechless, my father showed me his phone.
I was on a phone with Henry the entire time.
Just as I had been secretly on a call with my mother, my father had done the same with Henry. It was just like my father to be so well prepared, and I couldn't help but chuckle.
What are you laughing at? Do you think you've won against us?
Ashley shouted loudly at me as I gave a faint smile. Then she turned to Keith, who was standing next to me, and said,
Keith, break up with that woman right now and come with us. I've taught you since you were little that you must always obey your mother, haven't I?
At Ashley's command, Keith's body tensed up. She must have been controlling him like this since he was a child, yelling and forcing him to obey. Childhood conditioning is difficult to break, and even as an adult, it can still have a powerful hold. It seemed like Keith might end up following Ashley's orders again. Keith, it's okay. I won't let that happen. I gently held Keith's hand. Keith was no longer a little child, and he wasn't alone anymore. With just a little courage, he could break free from Ashley's control. When Keith looked into my determined eyes, his own gaze gradually became stronger. Taking a deep breath, he looked at Ashley with a firm resolve.
This is it. I'm cutting ties with you for good.
What did you say? You won't listen to me.
No, I won't. I'm not a child anymore. You can't force me to obey like you did when I was little.
Ashley seemed shocked, likely the first time Keith had ever stood up to her. The moment I saw Ashley's face, as if she was the victim, a surge of anger welled up inside me. What you've done is disgraceful, both as a person and as a mother. You have no right to control Keith. He's going to marry me, and we're going to build a happy family, so just stand back and watch. My words seemed to infuriate Ashley, her face turning as red as if steam might come out. She was so angry that she struggled to find the right words.
You'll regret this. You know, I'm warning you.
Robert shouted, but Keith responded in a cold voice.
Regret? Who's going to regret it? Cutting ties with you is only a benefit to me.
Hearing this, my father suddenly had an idea and made a proposal.
Keith, why don't you become a part of our family instead, legally? It's hard to completely sever ties with your biological parents, but we can do something similar. Leave that part to me. I'm the legal expert, after all.
Thank you so much.
I smiled at my father's excellent suggestion. Meanwhile, Robert and Ashley's faces grew increasingly defeated.
Wait, then who will take over our family's legacy?
No one wants anything that's been tainted by you two. By the way, Emily has also decided to cut ties with you. She's blocking all contact and said if you come near her house, she'll report you immediately. She's currently in an apartment, but she plans to buy a house soon and won't disclose the address.
When Keith mentioned Emily's decision, both of them were visibly shocked. Emily had also suffered terribly at the hands of these two. Now, the consequences of their actions were finally catching up with them.
What, then Fu will take care of us in our old age?
Even at this point, all Ashley could think about was herself. I delivered the final blow. No one is going to take care of you. You'll spend your old age alone, abandoned by both your son and daughter. That's the punishment you deserve. Accept it. As the harsh reality hit them, Robert and Ashley's faces were filled with despair. They both slumped down, completely silent. Afterward, we left the restaurant, leaving them slumped over in defeat. As a final act of mercy, we covered their portion of the bill. Henry immediately reported the incident to the city council. Although Robert had acted proud of being a city council member, he hadn't accomplished much, and once the story spread, he was quickly ostracized. Not long after, Robert was expelled from his position and fell from grace. He lost his job and is now living a reclusive life at home. Ashley, completely abandoned by her own children, became severely haggard from the shock. But no one worried about Ashley. She was never well liked in the neighborhood, and now people only whispered about her from a distance. Moreover, with Robert losing his job, they lost their income, and their financial situation gradually deteriorated. The once impressive house they lived in slowly fell into disrepair. At one point, unable to bear their situation any longer, Robert and Ashley, somehow finding out our address, showed up at my parents' house. They apologized to my parents, but my parents refused their apology.
You're apologizing to the wrong people. Besides, both of them said they would never forgive you, no matter what, so your apology is pointless.
If you come to our house again, we'll have you taken to the police station, without question.
After that harsh reception, they never showed up at my parents' home again. Later, Keith and I officially got married. He became part of my family, taking the name Keith Smith. Shortly after, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. He has Keith's size in my mouth. He is a very cute little boy.
He's so adorable. I almost want another one myself.
Emily, who had come to visit us, couldn't take her eyes off our newborn. Next to her, Keith was looking at our baby with the same delighted expression. Emily had also just moved into her new house, having recently left her apartment. Finally, Keith and Emily were free from Robert and Ashley. Seeing their smiles filled me with genuine happiness. I silently vowed to myself that I would do anything to protect these smiles. No matter what challenges come our way, I promised myself that I would never back down.